Anyone who believes in indefinite growth on a physically finite planet is either mad or an economist.
We don't want to focus politics on a notion that involves the rejection of principles around which a large majority of our fellow citizens organize their lives.
We are not as endlessly manipulable and as predictable as you would think.
Thank you. Evidence is coming out all the time showing the benefits of good self-control and effective use of willpower. People who have this trait are more successful in school and in work, their relationships are better, longer lasting, happier. In terms of what it is, quite fundamentally it's the capacity of the self to change the self. Among the scientists, we sometimes use the term self-regulation rather than self-control. I like the term regulate because it means to change, but not just any change. It's to change based on some idea or standard. When the government regulates how to make buildings or how to make sausages, it just doesn't say do it differently, but it says, well, these are the standards that it has to conform to in order to be safe and effective and so forth. So in the same way, self-control is changing yourself to live up to and conform to standards that you might consider good and beneficial in the long run. We restrain our impulses all the time. Indeed, culture has been such a success as a biological strategy for our species. You might ask, why don't other species pick it up? They would like to survive and reproduce better too. But they don't have the capacity to restrain their impulses, to conform to the complex layers of rules that society has and to make their behavior live up to these ideals. So it's a key psychological ingredient in making culture possible. Now, in terms of its effectiveness in daily life, we had people wear beepers for a week. And every time the beeper went off, they were supposed to sit down and record. Are you having a desire right now? Is there conflict about this desire? Are you resisting the desire? And what do you end up doing? And various other questions as well. The majority of desires that you don't resist, you act on. But if you resist, drops to 17%. So that's a rather dramatic impact, again, as people go about their daily lives, that yes, we are effective at restraining and controlling our desires. And again, I want to suggest that's one of the keys to civilized life. Now, to understand how willpower works and self-control, and I think of willpower as the energy behind self-control. People's capacity for self-control is limited, and it looks like when they expend some of it, then they have less, at least for a while. So experiments like the following showed this. We had people come to the laboratory. We told them to not eat for 3 hours because we were going to test their memory for taste and things like that. We weren't really interested in their memory for taste, but in psychology, if you tell people exactly what you're studying about them, they get all weird. So they came to the laboratory, were hungry. We did kind of a mean thing, baked fresh chocolate chip cookies right there in the laboratory. And then we sat them at a table, and there's a tray with all these cookies stacked up there, and some chocolates too, in case they weren't into cookies. Also on the table was a bowl of radishes, and for some of the participants, the experimenter said, well, you've been assigned to the radish condition, so your task is going to be to eat radishes, and don't touch the chocolates and cookies there for other people. We left them alone then for 5 minutes so that they'd be tempted, because, you know, they're smelling and wanting. Still, they succeeded. Nobody actually bit into the forbidden food, and everybody managed to eat the better part of a radish. Then we borrowed a procedure. We took them to a different room, and using a procedure from stress research, we measured how long do they keep trying before they give up at a difficult, frustrating puzzle. Because that takes self-control too. You feel like this is difficult, I'm not getting anywhere, I don't like this, but you make yourself keep trying and keep going. In this case, you wouldn't succeed because you rig the puzzle so that they're actually unsolvable, because if people solve them, it ruins the experiment. But you see, how long do they go on until they give up? And in rather dramatic findings, the people in the radish condition who had, essentially they had used up some of their willpower, or whatever you call it, but used up something inside them in the first task that then was not available to them to help them keep going and keep trying in the second task. And 5 minutes of resisting the temptation of the chocolate and biscuits, 10 minutes off how long they kept persevering at the frustrating puzzles. So this study and many like this have shown that when people engage in self-control, it uses up some kind of inner strength, energy, power, or willpower, then leaving them depleted the term we adopted, depleted, so they have less available for the next task. And even though the next task seems to have nothing to do with what they did, their capacity is compromised and they perform worse at it. The one concern one has, though, is something works great in the laboratory, does it work in real life? For this, we went back to the study with the beepers, and we looked in a given day, how often have you already resisted other temptations, successfully or unsuccessfully? But does the mere fact of having tried to resist previously, does that affect how successful you are with the next temptation or desire that comes along, regardless of what it is? Well, if you don't resist, it makes no difference. But when you do resist, resistance gets feebler. In other words, you're more likely to act out the behaviors you're resisting the more you've resisted other unrelated desires as the day go on. So again, this depleted willpower is something that happens to people on a daily basis. All these things take their toll and deplete your willpower, and so the next desire that comes along, whatever it might be, you become somewhat more likely to give in to. We say willpower, to understand it for your own life, it's like a muscle. It's something that gets tired when you exert it, so you can look at the depletion effects like that. But two other effects are also relevant. For one thing, these are not that your willpower is gone, but like a muscle will start to show fatigue effects when it's a little bit tired. And third, like a muscle too, regular exercise over a long period of time will strengthen the muscle. And there are about a dozen published studies now that have shown having people perform almost arbitrary exercises of self-control for a couple of weeks. The first study we had that worked had people work on their posture, sit up straight and stand up straight for whenever they think of it for 2 weeks, and then came back to the laboratory and they did better on laboratory tests having nothing to do with posture, but just being laboratory self-control tests. You have one resource of willpower. Some people think, well, I have good willpower for doing my work, not so good for dieting, good medium willpower. No, you have one stock of willpower. You may allocate it differently. You put it into one thing, it may not be available for other things. I've been talking about the New Year's resolution issue, and on that the implication is if you must make several resolutions, do them in sequence, because each New Year's resolution is usually a way to change yourself. So it takes self-control, it takes willpower. Well, if you're having several of these at once and trying to change your life in 4 different ways, each time you put energy into doing one of them, you're taking away the energy you need to do the others. So it's best pick one, do that one, succeed at it, and then move on to the next. Succeeding at the first will actually strengthen your muscle and give you a greater capacity to do the next one. Now, we mainly associate self-control, well, willpower with self-control, but that's not all it's used for. But it turns out it's also used for a couple other things. Decision-making, now well established that after people make a bunch of decisions, they've used up their willpower, and then their self-control will be worse. And we also have some studies not yet published, initiative, taking action, being active instead of passive, not choosing the default option, things like that. Those two consume willpower, and after you do them, your self-control will be compromised. Works the other way too. If you use up your willpower on self-control tasks, then your decision-making is compromised, and the effects of decision fatigue, a variety have shown. One, people will prefer not to make a decision at all. When they make it, less compromised, decisions become more impulsive, also more subject to irrational bias when willpower is depleted. As you know, in crude terms, the brain evolved from back to front, and the back part is the wanting part. The front part is the restraining part. So humans, the prefrontal, the most forward parts, the evolutionarily newest parts of the brain, seem to be the ones associated with self-control and restraint. But from our laboratory in particular, it's tied into glucose. Now, glucose people confuse with sugar, and it sometimes is a synonym, but glucose is essentially a chemical in your bloodstream that carries fuel, energy made from whatever you eat, any sort of nutritious food, carries it to the muscles, to the organs, and particularly to the brain. We found that after people exert self-control, the levels of glucose in the bloodstream are lower, so it looks like the brain has burned up a lot of the available fuel. Low levels of glucose in the bloodstream predict poor performance on self-control. And we've also found if we can restore people's glucose after they've depleted their willpower, then the performance revives pretty well. Other parts of the body use glucose too. The immune system uses it. So when you're, say, fighting off a cold or recovering from a disease, then your body is using a lot of its glucose for that purpose, which means you'll have less for self-control. And there's even analysis of the premenstrual syndrome. Again, there are all sorts of myths and stereotypes about this, but what appears to happen is that that particular stage of the menstrual cycle, the female body needs a lot more glucose for its reproductive activities. Women do increase how much they eat at that stage, but they don't increase it enough to compensate for the metabolic demands. And so essentially they're operating for a few days in a state of not having enough glucose, not having enough energy to fuel their willpower and their self-control. So it's not that women develop new evil impulses at this time or whatever. Rather, the inclinations that they have anyway, they're less capable to resist because, again, the body makes other claims on it. I want to argue this is one of the greatest human strengths. It's contributes to success in life in all manner of jobs and spheres, both academically and socially. Applying willpower, restraining desires is crucial. When you consider then the energy is also used for making decisions, tremendously important, and for active exhibiting initiative. This is one of, I think, the key traits that makes us human.
We have a notion that there are certain cultures which exhibit a mass breakdown in self-control and willpower, and others which have it. So one thinks of, the last days of the Roman Empire as an example of a kind of mass collapse of willpower, and I don't know, Spartans or something as a kind of exemplar of collective willpower. What do you think of the idea that culture as a whole can be so important in shaping an aggregate willpower across a population?
It's certainly true that cultural norms have changed, even in Great Britain and the United States. To go back to the 1800s, self-control and willpower was really prized, and it was sought, and it was one of the most important things parents wanted to instill in their children. The 20th century, we kind of got away from that, and thinking that, well, people should just want to be happy, and that we don't need to worry about self-control. If you just believe something, then it is likely to come true. So culturally, we got away from it. I think it's been a bit unfortunate that the interest in self-esteem in children has gotten lots of parents to think, oh, my children's self-esteem are so fragile, I should never criticize them or restrict them or make rules. First of all, children have plenty of self-esteem, and unless you're systematically trying to ground them into the dirt, you don't have to worry about it. But even if your goal is to build up self-esteem, it's more effective to set rules and reward and punish accordingly, because then the child learns what the standards are by which a person acquires a worth and acquires the right to self-respect. So in some ways, the concern with self-esteem has worked to the detriment of self-control, and I think in that case to the detriment of society, because people thinking that they're great, that they're God's gift to the world, isn't really a necessary ingredient or even a helpful ingredient in a productive society, but self-control is.
I'm thinking of two recent advertising slogans in Britain. One was naughty but nice with a massive chocolate cake, and another one was people just can't help acting on impulse, which I think is for fragrance or something. Do you feel that your book is, we're all fighting against the odds, because there is an advertising industry out there which knows all your evidence and which is basically a conspiracy to avoid us exercising willpower at any point in our lives at all?
Yes, advertising as a cultural institution has certainly contributed to the detriment of willpower. Even in terms of the basic values, go back to the 1800s, saving money, thrift was a highly valued virtue. At that time, manufacturing was limited by technology. You could sell whatever you made, pretty much, so you didn't have to get people to do it. But advances in manufacturing technology in the late 18th and late 19th and early 20th centuries, suddenly you could produce almost unlimited amounts of stuff. So then the limiting factor on how much you could sell was not how much you could make, it was how much people wanted to buy. And that's when advertising really took off to convince people to do this. And advertising knows that self-control is the enemy to them. If they want you to buy things, especially things that you don't necessarily need and have gotten through your whole life just fine without up till now, yes, there are forces arranged against promoting self-control, On the positive side, though, culture offers new tools and techniques to help people with self-control. There are all sorts of online things. There's the I don't do those, but my co-author was quite fancied by them. He signed up for mint.com, which taps into all your bank accounts and credit cards and spending, and will give you constant feedback. John also has those. Wears an armband when he sleeps that records how much time he's actually asleep, and the things that will record how many steps you take during the day and post it online. You can share that with your friends. All these things can help people to have more effective self-control as well.